Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today, I'm going to go over a couple deck lists that you should maybe consider, or if you just want to brew for day one of New Wild of Eldraine Standard. These will be best of one lists, and I've curated a bunch of lists. One of is mine, a couple from the community as well, from the Streamer Early Access event. What we normally do on this channel is we look at tournament results, we look at untapped stats, we do a full kind of meta breakdown, weekly trends for all arena formats, best of one, best of three, standard, explorer, historic, especially now with the kind of rotation, maybe alchemy as well. But the whole intent is day one, there's not stats. I'll get the stats out from Untapped. Usually we have the first tournaments towards the end of the week, so Friday we'll get like actual quantifiable stats. But for day one, these are some lists that stood out to me, either things I ran into during the early access event or just kind of general ideas. They're not, and I will quote, not the best necessarily, but the general ideas there, things to try out and to kind of get you started with the new set in terms of playing out the new cards. If you're a little short on wild cards, as always, I would say maybe wait a couple days, see what kind of comes out of the format, or just look at in terms of cards that could potentially be multi-deck cards. So having said all that, we will jump into it. And the deck that I'm going to feature that I made with a slight variation from the one that I played on my channel is mono red. What I will do is with all these decks, especially the ones from the other creators, I will link their specific videos on YouTube so you can check out the games in action if you want to see the decks themselves. So I'll credit where credit is due in that case. So with mono red, when I played in the event, I actually did mono red splash, just the very faintest amount of blue for the Adventure Viper. I cut that to have a cleaner mana base. And the card that really stood out to me was Virtue of Courage. So this card here, on the face side, it's 2 damage for 2. So your kind of Bone Crusher style ability. Early game, it gives you kind of your copies 9 through 12 of early removal. You still have your play with fires, you still have your lightning strikes. But the thing that really stood out to me with this card is once you get the virtue side down, any of your burn spells, any of your incidental ping damage turns into more card advantage. So something like lightning strike doesn't necessarily just reveal 3 cards and you cast 1. You could reveal 3 cards and for that turn, cast all 3 or play in case of lands. So we're pairing it with things, obviously you have your Kumanos in mono red, but we also have Voldaren Aperture, which does the ping damage that will then give you a card draw. So your Kumanos, your Voldarens, they all cycle themselves. So they're 1 mana, basically pseudo draw a card for the turn. We still have the Monastery Swiftspear. The other card that I replaced the Vipers with is Monstrous Rage. So this is a 1 mana, target creature gets +2/0 till end of turn, and then you get to create a monster roll, which is an aura that attaches, which gives another +1 and trample. So Monastery Swiftspear would get +3, for example, for the turn, plus the prowess +4. So it's a 5/4 trampler for basically 2 mana committed. And it kind of upgrades any of your other creatures as well, and it just kind of pushes through additional damage. The big thing is just cheap spells to kind of keep pushing through the damage. As I mentioned, the play of fires, lightning strikes. The other card that I didn't think would be that good, but was really flexible in a lot of this, is this Charming Scoundrel. So 2 mana, 1/1 haste. So not the best stats, but it allows you late game to discard a card and draw a card, or early game if you have like a lot of excess stuff, but not enough lands, can help you dig there. You could discard your squee and then get it back from the graveyard. So there's some utility there. You could create a treasure token. So this oftentimes helped me either play the 3-drop if I was missing with only 2 lands, or help me ramp into Virtue of Courage, potentially as early as turn 4. And then it also has the ability to create a Wicked Roll token. So Wicked gives a creature +1/1, and when the aura is put into the graveyard, they lose 1 life. So makes your creatures kind of scale up and potentially attack into bigger creatures. Still have your Feldens, still have your Squeeze. The last card is Godric, Cloaked Reveler. This is a 3 mana, 3/3 haste. And then if 2 permanents enter the battlefield in your control, it becomes a 4/4 flying. Evasion was really good in those games, and it also has fire breathing ability. So for every red mana you pay into it, it gets +1 power. There's a lot of ways, incidentally, that do trigger the second card into play. So on its own, Squee and Attack is 2 creatures that come into play for that turn. Voldaren Aperture is a creature and a blood token. The Charming Scoundrel is a creature and a treasure token, a creature and a roll token. The Monstrous Rage, even though it's an instant, creates a roll token. A Kumano being flipped is a new permanent entering the battlefield. So it's all kind of ways that it was all, like, honestly a lot easier to get this celebration than I thought it would be early on. The deck itself, a couple Myrex and a Sokuzen in the mana base. So then jumping to, we have Simic Ramp from Ali Eldrazi. So he kicked my ass with this deck, and it was really sweet. So there is a lot going on here, but we'll kind of highlight what's there. So it's a Simic Ramp deck. You have Armored Scrapgorger to get you ahead on lands, a big mana sink, and Awaken the Woods that creates X green forest lands tokens. So they're 1/1s that are also lands, so they do tap for additional mana. Briar Familiar is a 2-drop accelerant that can be returned to hand, and then late game you can pay 7 mana, mill 7, put target creature, enchantment, or land milled from among them onto the battlefield. So it's like a nice late game mana sink. The card that really stood out to me in this deck was the Blossoming Tortoise. So this could come out as early as turn 3 thanks to some of your early ramp. You have 8 2-mana accelerants, and then it mills cards 3 each when it enters the battlefield or attacks, and gets put land into play. Activated ability of lands you control costs 1 less, and your land creatures get +1/1. The Awaken the Woods is land creatures, so you get that bonus there. Forget to mention the Goose Mother. I had this in my pre-release pool and kicked ass. So this is kind of a different take on Hydroid Krasis. Not as good as Hydroid Krasis, but still a reasonable threat. So it's 2 mana, 2/2, and then you can pay X. It enters the battlefield with X additional 1/1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield, you create half that amount of food tokens rounded up, and then when it attacks, you can sack a food and then draw a card. So kind of a delayed card advantage engine with an evasive threat. There's a copy of Invasion of Arcavios. So this is a 5-mana battle. Enters the battlefield, you search your library, graveyard, or a card from outside the game. So there is a 7-card sideboard. You get to put it into your hand. And then when it flips, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you can copy that spell. So a couple of cards in the sideboard that we'll take a look at. Horned Lock Whale is a very annoying one. I was playing against CGB on blue-white during the early access, and this card just keeps bouncing your attacking creatures, either kind of time walks you in that sense, and then on the flip side, it is a really reasonable flash attacker, and then it has ward, so it's a little bit difficult to deal with. So all this ramp, what are we playing? So the card I really did not play around was Hurkyl's Final Meditation. So this is a 7 mana, and as long as it's not your turn, this spell costs 3 more to cast, so 10 mana. But you can return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand, and then you end the turn, so it's kind of a time walk in a sense. You have all these Awaken the Wood tokens that you can use. It's a lot of, like, you can float a lot of mana, generates a lot of mana, and kind of gets it that way there. The Virtuous Strength can also triple your mana. So that's a way you can tap all your mana, float it, cast Hurkyl's, bounce their stuff, and then recast your stuff. So some utility there. You'll notice a theme with all these, like enchantments, stuff like that, is the Bramble Familiar can mill it over. So you can mill over into Virtuous Strength, for example. A couple Titans of Industry, Nissa, just really good ramp threats. And then you have one with the Multiverse, another very powerful enchantment, kind of an Omniscient style effect. While not all the cards are free to play, 1 per turn from your hand or the top of the library, so it provides you some card advantage as well. Got the new creature land, the Veen's Restless Vinestalk. So itself is a 5/5 trample, but then when it attacks, you get to make another, up to another target creature has base power 3/3. And then these all get the boost from Blossoming Tortoise. Myrex as well for creature lands in there. This gets a cost reduction of 1, so it's cheaper to cast thanks to the tortoise. Your sideboard, you can tutor up individual spells as needed. Blue Sun's Twilight to steal something or make a copy. Steal and make a copy. Fading Hope, just tempo. Feral Encounter is fight. Another Hurkyl's Final Remediation. Invoke the Ancient for tokens. Memory Deluge for card advantage. And then Thunderous Debut for kind of a tooth and nail style effect. This was a really sweet one. I enjoyed playing against this. We then go to Hollywood Pizza. So this is a Jund Adventures deck. So it's got a lot of the powerful effects like the cut downs, Go for the Throats, Blood Tithe Harvester, Sheoldred's in here. It's introducing the new removal spell, The End. So this gets to kind of exile a creature, and then also Surgical Extraction all the copies from your opponent's hand. Basically just take everything out. You kill their Sheoldred, they have no more Sheoldreds for the game. I think this will be a very powerful removal spell. It's also taking advantage of the Iron Crag. So this is a 2-mana mana rock that if you have multiples, it kind of becomes an equipment, but this allows you to say turn 3 Sheoldred, turn 3 in this deck, Ziatora's Envoy, that gets you some free value from attacking, helps you ramp into some of your bigger threats. The Mosswood Dread Knight, so this is a powerful, like 2 mana, 3/2 trample, really reasonable stats on its own, and then it has the adventure side where you get to draw a card and lose a life. When it dies, you may cast it from your graveyard as long as an adventure, you may cast it from your graveyard as an adventure until the end of your next turn. So it gets you kind of that repeatable value, so you can cast it again and reset it and get a whole bunch of kind of recursive value out of it. There's also the Questing Druid, so Reckless Impulse style effect, and then it gets bigger whenever you cast any non-green spells, basically. So scalable creature with more card advantage. So a lot of incidental ways to get card advantage paired with the deck. A Riveteer's Charm, just sacrifice big creature, get some card advantage, or exile a graveyard. Then you got a couple copies of Decadent Dragon, 4 mana, 4/4, flying trample. When it attacks, you create a treasure token. And then for 3 mana, you can exile 2 cards from your opponent's library. You may look at and play for them as long as they remain exiled. The card I'm not 100% sure on is the Ashiok Wicked Manipulator. In the entire early access, I didn't see this card get cast once. It's fine. I don't think it's that great. You can do the new Black Tutor if you want. You can sack the Iron Crag. That's what a lot of people were doing. You can just up the copies of like Questing Druid. I'd probably just play another Gix Command and best of 1. The Sweeper is really reasonable, but just all reasonable kind of cards in that effect. Moving on, we go to Jim Davis's Orzob Tokens list. So another card that seemed really good in the early access was Regal Bunnycore. This card just gets really big really fast. So Jim's playing it in a black-white tokens deck. So you have things like Wedding Announcement, the Lord Skitter Sewer King that's kind of Goblin Rabblemaster-esque with rats. The rats can't block, but kind of that idea. And then whenever a rat enters the battlefield, it exiles a card from your opponent's graveyard. So it's a good kind of built-in graveyard hate. Ilias Akor gains life and drains when things die. You have the Invasion of Gobokan to like Thoughtseize your opponent, and then if you flip it, it just kind of anthems your cards. Shadar to make recurring tokens. Rite of Oblivion, sack those tokens, just really flexible removal. Skrell's Hive for just, again, more continued tokens. Vran as another similar Blood Artist adjacent effect. Archangel Elspeth makes tokens, but notably -2. You can give your Regal Bunnycore flying, so it's a flying bunny angel. Mondrak, double up on those tokens. Wandering Emperor, tokens, removal, just really good card. And then lastly, Virtue of Loyalty. So this 2 mana instant speed, 2/2 vigilance, and then the 5 mana is kind of a delayed Cathar's command, or Cathar's Crusade. Doesn't stack in that same sense, but every end step, your creatures get counters on it, and then they untap, so it's like a pseudo-vigilance. They're still susceptible to an opponent's Wandering Emperor, for example, but it lets you go offense-defense really well and just stacks counters and makes your board very large. And then lastly, Rakdos Rats by MTG Brew Lab. This is another deck that just kind of rolled me over during early access. So the rats, while they can't block, they get pretty aggro pretty quick. Tangled Colony is an above rate creature, so 2 mana, 3/2 can't block. When it dies, you create X black rat tokens where basically the amount of damage dealt to it this turn. So if your opponent blocks it with a 2 power, well, then you get 2 rats. If they block it with a 5 power, you get 5 rats. So it kind of scales out from that. Some removal, play with fire, go for the throat, Sheoldred's Edict. You have the Lord Skitter Sewer Rat, Lord Skitter's Butcher. So 3 mana, 2/3, enters the battlefield. You either get a rat, you sack a creature to draw a card, or your creatures get menace. If you go wide, the menace is really reasonable. You have Karamox the Rat King. So other rats you control have toxic, so it lets you do the poison game plan. So interesting, a card from an older set just happens to be a rat that kind of fits the shell. When there's the battlefield, you look at the top 5 cards of your library, you reveal any number of rats, put in your hand, so a card advantage and kind of an alt-win condition of your rats. You have Song of Totenzan, which is kind of overrun rat kind of idea. So just sink all your mana into it, get that many rats, they get haste, so push through a lot of unexpected damage. Redcap Gutter Dweller, 4 mana, 3/3 menace. Enters the battlefield, you create 2 rats. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sack a a creature. If you do, you put a 1/1 counter on it and exile. So you can basically play cards off the top of your library. So some more card advantage with Carex and Red Cap you got in there. And then Twisted Sewer Witch, 5 mana, enters the battlefield. You create a rat token, and then for each rat you control, create a Wicked roll and attach it to it. Probably a little bit too high on the mana curve, but it is kind of a nice top end of the deck. When you have cheap cards like this that want to play off the top of your library, maybe an alternative kind of way to go about it. With all the cheap tokens, you might even just want like the Vampiric Rites, the kind of new sack a creature, draw 2 cards style effect, just to kind of keep the curve a little bit lower. But other than that, the deck seems fairly lean, aggressive, and can push through a lot of damage very quickly, as I encountered. So that's it from the community. Like I said, as soon as the new stats come out, as soon as MTGO leagues complete, as soon as we have any untapped data, I will do standard best of 1, best of 3, and then as it extends to the eternal formats, we'll also cover it for those formats as well. You'll notice in the top right hand corner, we are trying to get 10,000 subs on the channel. We are really close on YouTube. We're 126 away. It's free, easy, helps out the channel. So if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great one.